Welcome to Visibility Unlimited Spotlight. And if you're listening to the podcast, welcome to Visibility Unlimited. Today's guest is Charlie Oliver, one of my favorite people to speak anything and everything tech about, and a whole bunch of other things. But for today, we're going to stay focused on our tech conversation. Charlie, welcome. Please tell the audience about yourself.
Hi, Leslie, and everyone out there. Thank you so much for welcoming me. I'm really excited to be here because I'm a big fan of yours. So thank you. So I'm Charlie Oliver. I'm the founder and CEO of Tech 2025, which is a platform and community that helps people and organizations to prepare for the future, for the technological future. We launched in January 2017 before everyone really started talking about AI, machine learning, and all these advanced technologies. And the goal was and still is to empower people to understand what these technologies are and to prepare for them, to upskill, reskill, cross-skill, and to also really, hopefully this time around, unlike Web 2.0, get a piece of the action, right? We want people to participate financially too.
Equity in a different equity on all levels.
All.
I love it. So thank you for that. To me, you are my tech guru. When I see something or read something, I'm like, oh, I need to call Charlie. I need to break this down. And before I even call you, you've already broken it down in a post. So I love you for that.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. I love doing that. I love it.
You're right there. And so that's why I needed to have this conversation with you. We're going back into the office. I need everyone to stop saying we're going back to work. No one has stopped working. We're going back into the offices slowly but surely. What does it look like for tech in the workplace, the lack of representation of tech in the workplace, and the future of tech? You can start any way you would like to go.
Oh, well, that's not fair.
Okay, let's do workplace tech.
Okay.
What should we expect going back? What should some companies, what are they doing?
Oh, well, that answer is as broad as the sky is wide. I mean, it's literally companies are trying to figure this out as they go along, as many of us are. Most of us, we're trying to figure it out. The thing that's the most pressing problem that they need to solve now, moving into the next year or two, as you know, is going to be bringing employees back to the office, and whether or not that be full-time, part-time, hybrid, whatever, and then doing it safely. So that still is a point of sort of a very focal point and a point of contention, because that has everything to do with the company culture. And as you know, whether you're talking about rolling out technologies or acquiring customers or engaging employees, it really kind of starts with the culture. Right. So I know that I know for a fact, as you do, I'm sure, that companies are struggling with figuring out how to decide how much or how little they want employees back in the office, how to do it safely. Do you force them to get the vax? I know that they can do that, but do they want to? And all this other stuff. And then if you do decide on a hybrid workforce, most importantly, how do you get your teams, right? Your in-person people and your remote people to work together and do it effectively and in a way that keeps them engaged and wanting to do more, right? What are those tools like? So when you're looking at the technological part of it, there's a lot going on there. You have the technology that's tracking the health tech, the things that offices are, the hardware and the software that offices are actually implementing in the office to track employees, to see who's, they aren't necessarily, I think a lot of companies are relaxing the social distancing, but there's still a lot of things in place. I mean, they're tracking us in so many more ways now that has to do with the pandemic. So that's one thing. The other thing, again, is the collaborative technologies. We're trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. I mean, we started on Zoom. Well, not started, but, it kind of popped off last year on Zoom. And so there are a lot of questions there. And then here's the other question that's a big one that we're going to be seeing companies grapple with in the next year. The pandemic pushed them even further in this direction than they thought they would have to go. But they are now looking at employees having to develop apps that they need, whether it be for employees or in-house, or it probably won't be consumer facing, but they're dealing with low code, no code platforms and trying to get sort of the workforce to create and collaborate on building technologies, because we don't have enough tech people out there. There's not enough
That becomes the issue, that there
global.
was, yes, there was an overabundance at one point of everyone going into tech. And then I think that was the problem, right? There was an overabundance of not maybe the right,
See, I'm glad you said that, because I would say I'm glad you said the perception was that there was an overabundance
right.
of tech. But the fact is that if there were an overabundance, we wouldn't be in such a deficit now. There wasn't an overabundance. There was a particular type of person that was gravitating or being welcomed into the tech space, right?
I'm glad you said welcomed into the tech space. That's
Right. But
yes.
everyone else, which is why Tech 2025 started, everyone else, and that's not just recently, I mean, it's over the past 30 years, have been told, you're not smart enough, you're not part of the club, you can't do what we do, this is special, we're creators. And so they've been excluding everyone else.
So I'm going to call it what it is. That was gender wise,
Right.
race wise,
Right.
and so which
Social.
leads into the issue of we're getting to AI and programming and how tech can detect who we are. If they're tracking all of us, they're not tracking all of us. They're tracking us, but not all of us are being identified properly within that. So that goes back to who's being hired and who's in the tech world.
Right. It is true. It's it's funny how things come to bite you in the behind. If you don't, there's a lot to be said for being progressive and proactive about trying to sort of mitigate the problems that are there. You can't reach for the glory without understanding the price that you have to pay and the responsibility that you have once you get that glory and once you get that praise. Then you have a responsibility. And I think what happens too often, not just in tech, but certainly, the culture in Silicon Valley certainly is we're the cowboys, we want the glory, we're saving the world.
Wild Wild West.
Be careful of anyone who's saying this, telling you that they're going to save the world. Okay. I always say, can you save yourself first? Can you do that?
How about that first?
Yeah, you don't need tech for that either. But anyway, to your point, your great point, it is true, and this all goes back to culture. I sat in the day that Trump was elected in 2016, which is, by the way, this is an event where I announced Tech 2025. I was at a conference called Techonomy, which is it's a quarterly publication for technology innovation, and it's primarily for C-suite executives. And so they do quarterly events. Well, not just quarterly, they actually do a lot of events. Anyway, I was, the day Trump was elected, sitting in a room full of 100 executives at this conference in Half Moon Bay in San Francisco. And so these were the executives of some of the biggest brands in the world. And it just so happened that we had planned this, the event had been planned obviously a year in advance.
Right.
So I'm watching all of these executives sort of, like everyone, be shell-shocked at the fact that, wow, Trump is president. How did that happen? And I gave us sort of a dire warning about what was to come. And 2025 was built on this, in a sense, on this. And that's that if you think what you see today is going to shock you, keep excluding people in your organizations from being a part of the development and the implementation and the deployment of these technologies, as well as benefiting from it financially. We should be getting a piece of the pie too. If you keep doing that, you're going to basically make yourself irrelevant quicker than you can imagine.
You're tripping yourself up.
Yeah.
You said everyone wants to sit in the ivory tower and be that person and have the best new idea, but the best new idea is not inclusive to the society, not only communities within your smart circle, but the society for which you are developing tech for. Then who are you developing for?
Right. I think a lot of those questions, unfortunately, there's a certain amount of thoughtfulness that needs to go into just about everything that we do. But the reality is that's not the case, right? I mean, people have whole entire human beings, children, and just like that, right? Like a lot of it happened. Okay, I'm just saying, if it happens with creating human beings, creating a piece of technology is even easier to say, yeah, what you know. And that whole idea that if I allow for any friction, which is very necessary in the early phases of developing technology, if I allow for any friction, it is going to hinder my creativity and possibly thwart any sort of real innovation that could happen. Well, that's a lie, right? That's a lie that we tell ourselves that, but more so that's the culture of or has been the culture of Silicon Valley.
Right.
We have to understand and be more intentional about not just embracing the natural friction that's there, because the problems that arise with technology, it actually, you can begin to see issues with the data sets and everything. You can see that early, right? But you also have to be intentional about how you define, how you find that friction down the road. So you have to have foresight. You have to develop teams that want to look down the road at what their technology should or could or might be.
Okay, so can I ask a question? If you're developing the teams, it comes back to, if you're not looking down the road, you don't know which road you're going down,
Right.
and you're assuming you're going to stay on a straight road,
Right.
as opposed to any growth on any product has many arms and legs. As a tree, a lot of branches to that.
Yeah.
So where are the people involved from the beginning that can prepare you to go down those roads?
Are you talking about in the enterprise or a startup or?
Well, in any of it, because at some point, any business, I don't care what it is,
Right.
if you are a consumer based business, which tech is for the most part,
Right.
Regardless of what level, somebody's buying something,
Yes.
whether it's millions or $25.99.
Yes. Yes.
So those are conversations that need to be had at a level of $25.99 and $1 million. And if the people, we always go back to who's sitting in those rooms with valid voices to help you navigate those roads, and consumers you were a counter on the road, on that journey there.
Right.
It just becomes that magical black box that isn't magical in tech. That's
Yeah.
my personal thing, how I feel about the magical black box.
You nailed it. I mean, you nailed it. And the reality is that, you have to ask what master are you serving, right? Who are you serving? So I'll tell you that with Tech 2025, I went hard in these past 3.5 years. I was killing myself doing a lot of events, probably more than I needed to, but this is the entrepreneur in me.
I will vouch for that.
Oh, thank you so much. But here's the thing, there's a tendency, as everyone does, we can complain sometimes, and it's like, oh, when things are, and you're not treated well. And so I always, when I found myself doing that at times, I always, no matter if I'm talking to myself or talking to someone else, I would say, but I'm doing this to serve other people. Yes, I've agreed to serve. This is a platform for serving other people, right? And let me remember why I'm doing this. Okay, so if you ask a technologist that, depending on where they are, who they were, if you ask someone who launches a startup and they get funding, let's say funded startup, which is really important, who are they really serving, right? Who's their first responsibility to? You could say it's the customer or the consumer or whatever the app. The VC, who wants their money, right? Who wants their money? And so, this is, I'm saying this because this is and if you do that from the corporate end, right? Let's say the enterprise company that is, who are they serving? The shareholder. That's their master, right? I mean, who's collecting the money? So there's a lot of lack of accountability because, number one, we've got to get them their money. Right. And number two, fixing the problem is not that easy. And a lot of times it's actually very difficult. And a lot of times fixing the problem actually involves multiple failures to get to the solution.
Right.
Or even worse, for a lot of people, being transparent.
Well, I always say, you're never going to be transparent because you're never going to see all the books. You're never going to know all of that. So there's a definite accountability has to happen. You nailed that one for sure. Right. But visibility instead of transparency. The
visibility of the
whatever is going on, as opposed to transparent, because no one's ever going to be transparent. There's always going to be someone that knows what's in those books, which knows in the back, but there's the visibility to who you're working with and who you're serving and who you are supposed to be serving, the consumer eventually, that there's a visibility that is there. Because people get hung up on this word transparent. And I think when I work with corporate and I hear employees say, we want transparency, I'm like, you're never going to get all of that. So let's stop speaking about that. Ask for visibility.
Right. Well, you know what's interesting about that, I think really interesting about that is that, so you know, Kathy, I'm going to say Kathy Neesmith, Kathy O'Neill. She's the author of a book called Weapons of Math Destruction, which is a book about algorithms gone awry, whatever. It's a great book. I suggest you read it if you get your hands on it. And so when she first launched the book, she did a tour, of course, right? And I went to one of the events to hear her speak, and she was great. It was a great event. She answered all the questions thoughtfully, and then she spoke about, and I also read about before I went to the event, how she would, having this company for 2 years, she had a company where she would try to convince companies to allow her to audit their algorithms.
Right.
To prevent problems, right? To find them or prevent problems, right? So she said in this talk, this fireside chat, that after 2 years, you know, if I'm remembering correctly, she couldn't get any company to allow her to audit. Basically, she couldn't get any customers, right? She couldn't get them to allow her to audit.
So I wanted her to come in.
Well, and I raised my hand right at the end, and I said, what's the incentive for any company, any executive, to allow you to come in and see their dirty drawers, right? Assuming that they're there, right? Nobody's still, I mean, I still wouldn't let someone come in and see my underwear drawer. It doesn't matter. You know, it's like, and so when you talk about incentive, unfortunately, the reality is that we like to think that people are going to do the right thing and that there'll be enough people in that chain. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of people who maybe usually do the right thing in this instant might decide, I don't think, I'll be silent and I'll just do that. So here's the thing. We have to incentivize people. I know that sounds terrible, but the idea that people, because you want consistency, right? You want people to understand what the parameters are. And if you tell them, one of the ways that I know, I just spoke to someone, in fact, she works at one of the big tech companies, I'm not going to say which one. She actually works with them with regards to their, a lot of their ethics issues that come up and sort of operationalizing a lot of the ethics. And I said to her flat out, I said, well, listen, how are you getting the engineers there? Because this is, again, one of the top 5 companies in the world, and they've got like companies within companies.
Within companies, right, exactly.
Charged with trying to get it. So I said, how are you doing this in that complex matter to get the engineers that we know don't really want to be bothered with this to do it? She said, well, we do this, and then we tie it to their bonus. And
there you go.
Okay, so scratch the other stuff tied to their bonus, right?
That's what's happening now with DEI for companies, which is very sad that you have to incentivize somebody to do their job and to do the right thing and to be ethical. I'm sorry, I still have issues with that. Very old school with that. Get up and do what you're supposed to do. But okay, we're in a different time where it's incentives is what's happening.
Well, has that ever happened, though? Because corporations have notoriously locked us out, us, women, people of color. We've been locked out since the beginning. Have they ever done anything that has been without, the thing that's making it happen now, let's be real. I mean, pain, right? And you suffer enough and you look at your own possible destruction, you'll agree to things that you never thought you would before. And that pandemic showed them. As I always like to bring this up, the CEO of Cisco back in 2015, just as he was about to retire, said to his entire workforce, I guarantee you that by 2025, 40% of the companies that exist today will cease to be relevant by then because they won't have digitized, democratized, and done everything. And I mean, listen, we can go back and forth over the number, but it's safe to say that the lifespan of a company today, and research shows this, is a lot shorter than it was. The average
100%
on the market, it's like 10 years, and then they go into decline, and they're zombies. You know, it doesn't mean that they are over with, but they cease to be relevant and they cease to grow, which is worse than being dead, if you ask me.
Right. So then if we're incentivizing, and this may you may or not have this answer. If we're incentivizing with your bonus, say to expand culturally, race, gender, where there's that, my heart kind of clenches and my stomach clenches of you bring that checkbox of just bringing people in and then being able to say, "Oh, I told you it didn't work," without making sure that you
We
know.
talk about this. Well, we talk about this a lot, but let me just say, I agree with you 100%. But here's the good thing about that, because it all depends on how you measure success, right?
Okay.
If you're measuring success based on a check mark and getting them in, and then if they leave, oh well, then you'll get the same. Those results are actually going to fare worse than if you had never gotten them in before. All right, if you had never before the bonus, right? Because then you could just put that on. Hey, systematically, this is what we're doing. Here's the thing: if you define how you fail or whether you fail has everything to do with how you define, number one, success, right? And then understanding what your limitations are within the confines of trying to achieve that success. So what I like to say is, when it comes to something like that, bonuses, I get what you're saying. It really kind of sucks that people are, we have to be incentivized. But when you think about it, that's, from a lot of people, have to be incentivized to do. If I go exercise, I want to know that there's a little tiny piece of cake in the refrigerator. Like, it's a very different thing. Very different thing.
Very different, but yes.
But here's what happens. If you say to the executive, if you say, hey, listen, this has to be tied to, this is tied to your bonus, but the outcome must be this. We have to see this level of engagement and movement and, upward mobility. And we're the research that we're getting from the employees is not just quantitative, it's qualitative, right?
Absolutely.
This cannot be a numbers thing. We did an event for a client back in, this was last year. And this is a client that specializes in procurement. They're a global brand. They work with nothing but enterprises, and they bring in tech talent from around the world, right? Okay. And here's the thing that they said to me, and I will never forget this, because this is specifically regarding tech. They said, one of our biggest clients, which is literally one of the top 3 banks in the world, came to us and said, we're trying to figure out how to grow women in leadership positions, like over the next 3 years, like how to really move them into but we don't have a system of measurement to even know how they've been moving throughout the organization, which I thought was profound. I said, this is the biggest company in the world.
And I think I know who you're speaking of. And they Rachel, and
we'll talk.
Right. And they don't.
Well, that's the thing. So we can go into that direction. But here's the thing about that. It was almost like it was a dirty secret, right? Because they said anything. I said, no, I hear you. But here's the thing. If they're going through that and that company does not have a simple system of measurement and understanding what works and doesn't work, then a lot of other companies don't either, right? Especially when it relates specifically to tech. These were for tech leadership positions, women in tech. So when they came to me and they said, we want you guys at Tech 2025 to help us to have a conversation with our audience and primarily our clients about this, and so I said, well, you got to cut to the chase. Can't be a panel about, let's grow women. Yeah, but I said, no. What you need to do is say, this is what the event is and what the title is. Here are the strategic things that you can do starting today to grow leadership, women in leadership over the next year, right? Like, in other words, if you do these things starting today, you're already getting off on the right track for 2021. And this is what you need to do. And then give them some tools and give them this. And so begin to have a more grounded conversation about it, right?
Absolutely. Because, I come in on the other side and I'm like, okay, Charlie has given you these things, right? And I'm like, but who are you? Can you execute these things?
Right.
Have you reviewed who you are that is the added value to making these things happen?
Is there a commitment?
Is there a commitment? Are you going to be accountable? And not only the leadership, how do you explain to the entire company, firm, whatever it is, the importance of investing in the movement?
Yes.
Of whether it's women or people of color or Black folks or disabilities, like, where is the commitment, and how are you actually going to educate yourself in order to execute what's needed to happen? because everybody wants that one checklist from the, and it's like it's
that easy. It's
that.
not that listen, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back, sometimes to go forward. And no one likes failure. No one likes being uncomfortable. And what I say, because I said this, we were talking about the idea of empowerment, and it's like it's a nice word, yes. And we all want to do it. We want to help other people to do it. We all want to feel. But when you talk about empowering people who have typically been disempowered in the system,
Right.
we tend to forget that means not that you're giving it. What that means is that there's a shift in power that's happening. So if someone is realizing that they can take back their power, who are they taking it from? And how does that person or that group of people feel about having their power sort of shifted? Do you know what I mean? And so that's culture. That's
So
culture.
here's a conversation that I had yesterday. Like,
Uh-oh.
and so I'm gonna paraphrase it a little bit, but someone was saying that their why was much more important. Why they are there, who they are, why their why.
Oh, that.
And so someone else said, because I don't look like you doesn't mean my why is not just as strong as your why. And so, I have a chapter in my book and I have a saying, just because my good doesn't look like your good doesn't mean it's no good.
I love that. Yes, that's sure.
That's a shirt. And it really, and that could be also, it could use for all sorts of things.
Exactly.
That's because when everyone gets on the power, there's different levels of power. I always say there's different levels of privilege. There's privilege and there's privileges because of your privilege and power. And
Yes,
we look at two words when there's more than that.
it's
And
true.
and so in order to, but until we have, like you said, the real conversations on removing magical boxes, why can't we do this? Here's our goal. It can't be a checkbox goal or what success. The success is success step one, you recognize it. So step two, you're going to bring someone to help you execute. Success three, you're going to continue to like there's so many steps to the success, not
Exactly.
one just big, we're good. Um, we have it in tech now, we're all ready to go, or in any field. So, with that said, what do you see? You have so many conversations in 2025, Tech 2025. What's the next thing in tech, and what's the next thing you feel that may be beneficial for tech in business?
Tech and business, meaning beneficial for the tech industry and business or companies
Any,
implement technology.
any of it.
Oh, okay. That's a great question. Undeniably. So 2025, we chose that year. I chose that year for a reason, because it's a tipping point. I saw it as a tipping point. I know other people did, but I really saw 2025 as a tipping point, meaning whatever you're doing with wherever you are and your organization is with regards to, digitization or digital transformation, the bottom line is that by 2025, the way that the technologies are developing, and remember, this was back in 2016 that I thought of this, so it's still really early, right?
Right.
Because I basically heard all of these technologies, and which I knew because I've been working in tech for so long.
Mhm.
But when you talk to the developers of the tech back then, right, a lot of them would say, it'll be, look, when is this going to be ready for prime time? When is this technology really going to be very well embedded in society and used and whatever, experiencing the benefits? And they would all say, about 8 years, about 7 years. It's all about the same time. They're all very optimistic about projecting when technology will be ripe and ready for society and everything. Here's the thing. I've said, well, we've got like 9 major technologies, really groundbreaking sort of emerging technologies percolating all at the same time, all together, right? So give that about 8 years. We're looking at 2025. That's a tipping point, which means if you're not at a certain level with your organization, if you haven't moved off of those legacy systems,
You no computer room any longer.
right.
And one person knows how to use.
Yeah, and it's not just the companies; it's also individuals. If you're at moving towards 2025, still working on legacy systems in your own life, have them in your own life, but you still haven't figured out how to automate a lot of things that you need.
Stop talking about me, Charlie. Go ahead now.
You're gonna no, but you're not though. You're we're all at different places. So to your question specifically, here's what we can definitely expect. And this is probably, again, going back to Tech 2025. I don't mean to bring it on back to us, but this is what I
Right.
think. One, the biggest shift that's going to happen over the next I'd say 3 years is going to be the democratization of innovation with regards to technologies. And that's within companies and outside of companies as well. You've got an entire workforce of people who are quitting. They don't care. They're rethinking their lives. Do I even want to do this anymore?
Right.
You've got an entire generation that's going to be, what do you call it? Retiring. People retiring, and they're retiring early. Baby boomers are going to be leaving. They're already starting to leave very early. And so you have all of these industries now that are looking at these multiple forces colliding, right? You got, and especially in industries like trucking, where those truck drivers are all retiring in the next couple of years, they're out, right? And you've got to get the young ones in there. And so, but you've got to fill that power back, right? And so you get that. And then you have the fact that these companies still either have to develop these technologies that are now, as a result of the pandemic, just the demand is through the roof for the tech. What do I mean by that? Well, think about how much more you've been using technology since the pandemic started. Think about how many more apps, how many more platforms you're using as a consumer because of the pandemic, right?
Think about the internet wasn't prepared for this. The power for not commercial, but I even think commercial, just no one expected every human being to be home on 5 and 6 devices. If you were blessed enough to have 5 or 6 or one device, your neighbor may have had 4 or 5 pulling.
Who knew, right?
Who knew?
So that was just I don't want to say the beginning, but the reality is that as we come out of the pandemic, actually the real work begins, because a lot of these companies, they still are on legacy systems. They've got to move into the cloud. And with that, with regards to the big tech companies, you're going to see like bloodbaths happening. I don't care what anyone says. These companies, especially like Microsoft, Amazon, the cloud storage companies, they know, they see, and they've been seeing, but definitely in the pandemic, they're saying, geez, man, all of these companies, even especially like big companies down to small startups and businesses and mom and pop, they've got to move to the cloud. They've got to get everything, and so we want to be that. Seeing that battle happen with regards to the tech companies, but then with regards to the companies, they don't have enough talent. They don't have enough tech talent to build this tech. So they're relying on employees with no code, low code platforms. And so to that, for the employees, it's great. It's great because
say that again. I need you to say that again for anyone that may be listening. If you want to get in tech now, this is your time.
Yeah, and it's your time. And not only that, I mean, the funny thing about now, which literally you could not have said this at any other time in history. The great thing about now, think about it. To get in tech, you don't need to know tech. You don't need to know how to code. Let me put it that way. Okay. Go online, go to Indeed or one of these hiring platforms, job search platforms, and search for no code, low code, citizen developer. That's what's coming next. That's what the companies are really trying to figure out. I'll give you an example of that with Uber and Lyft in a second. But you don't even have to know how to code anymore. 4 years ago, they were telling you, you've got to code. You've got to code. We've never subscribed to that. I always felt like everybody should learn how to code. That'd be great. But I never saw that. I never was on that religious, like, oh, you've got to be a part of coding. Quite the contrary. Code, technology involves communication. It involves sales. It involves a lot of things. So to that end, that's a wonderful thing. But here's the thing. They're not even requiring a lot of the degrees that they used to require now. Now Microsoft and I think Amazon, they're like, oh, you don't have any degree? Okay, come on in. It's okay. They don't even care. So it is a wonderful time. And not only that, you can go in, and I said this to someone who I just spoke to her. She's brilliant. She's working in innovation at at a big company for years. And we were talking about her next sort of job move. And she says, I kind of want to stay in innovation. I don't know if I should go stay in innovation or go here, go there. And I said, here's what you need to know. No matter where you go, you have to go with the mindset that you are not in any way necessarily beholden to how they define what the position is in their minds. You have the luxury now.
For the back, for the people in the back, Charlie, say it again for the people in the back and the people on the side.
But go at it. You got to carve this is the best time ever to carve your own path. Okay. And I'll give you a perfect example with regards to these guys. Okay. So Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, this is a great example. Their drivers, they're short staffed. They can't find drivers. I mean, everybody's short staffed now. So their current drivers are developing apps to help make their job easier. And these are apps that have to do with, making sure they don't get cheated by the company. These are apps that help them with the passengers. And so 2 years ago, if something like that happened, do you think that those companies would say, great? No, they would say, no, you can't do this. This infringes on our, Now these 3 companies they've all said, we love it. We want the drivers to develop their own apps. We want to create a marketplace. We're partnering with some of them. In some cases, they're actually giving them money. You have right there an opportunity. Those drivers who are developing these apps with no code apps, they are now talking to these companies about innovating the companies, for the drivers, in a way that couldn't have happened before. And they might even have a business in that. I'll sell you my Appel with just think about it. You can make your own way.
So as we wrap up, it goes back to how we always start, you and I. Culture.
The C word.
The C word. Innovation.
Right.
Not only of products, but of yourself.
Yeah.
Because now you are your product. And if you want to be in tech, don't be scared of tech. That this is the opportunity to create your path within tech. And for the companies that are obsolete, or let me rephrase that. I'm paraphrasing you. And the companies that think they are hot now can be obsolete very, very soon. So it is time to expand your diversity of staff, of thought, of opportunity,
of business models,
because this is the time.
Now or never.
Harley, there's so many things. I'm going to have you back if you honor me coming back. There's so many things that I would love to, we haven't even touched on, that I would love to have this discussion with you. You are so brilliant. I learn something new every time I speak to you. You are my unofficial upskill colleague and friend.
Wait, what's this unofficial? What do I have to do?
Because you don't know that you are officially my tech guru, because I never even said that loud to now. You're officially my friend. You are unofficially everything I look to.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I love what you do, and I have been a fan of yours since day one. So this has truly been an honor, and I would be happy to come back anytime.
Thank you. Let people know where they can find you and find Tech 2025, please.
Very easy. So for Tech 2025, you can find us anywhere on any of the social platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, under Join Tech 2025. That's our ID across the board. And the website is tech2025.com. Go there, sign up for the newsletter, see some of the things we're doing, the events we have coming up. And if you want to reach out to me on Twitter, I'm at It's Complicated, just like it sounds, no hyphens or anything. And yeah, I love connecting with people. So please feel free to reach out.
I would say if you love anything about tech, follow Charlie, follow Tech 2025. They do amazing events. I love jumping on when I can. Thank you for all you do and continue to educate and to serve, as you would say. For all the listeners and watchers, I always say thank you and continue to expand beyond your current culture. Take care now.